Tonight's the full moon. October 1st. The moon's in Pisces, and here in where I live on the California northern border, the moon come up and it was huge like the moon behind me, and it was orange tonight. It wasn't blue, it was orange. I got Greg here with me tonight, and we're going to talk about some things that matter to me. I don't care if it matters to the FBI, it should, but or the president, but it matters to me. Hi, Greg.
Hey, Hugh. So today was the anniversary of the Las Vegas shooting, and what are the chances that today is the very day that Trump and Melania both come out and say they tested positive for coronavirus?
Scary.
Very strange timing.
Scary. I told you 2 days ago I woke up and had a dream that Donald Trump had died. I hope this virus doesn't kill him. I want to vote for him because I definitely don't want Biden in the White House with Kamala Emhoff.
Well, I'm sure that he'll have the same thing happen to him if he gets in there, because I don't think it was an accident. I think they gave it to him. What do you think?
That's a possibility. He's president, and somebody tried to kill him with ricin last week. A woman in Canada, a woman in Canada tried to kill the United States president. Gee.
Yeah, what a shocker. And Canada, of course, is run by that queen, the same people that run, that's where Kamala Harris is from, Jamaica and Sri Lanka.
Yeah,
Sri Lanka's...
Just like Obama was from Kenya. The Queen, she's awful active in our White House nowadays. It's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, I found some interesting things about the ties between Sri Lanka and how China is buying up a good portion of Sri Lanka. And then you had Joe Biden's son get $1.5 billion from China. And in Jamaica, you have Kamala Harris's father saying that their relatives were slave traders down there. This is obviously a connection between the Queen and her drug running. And of course, you know plenty about the drug running, don't you, Hugh?
I know too much about the drug running. I stopped it. I stopped Kiki Camarino and Robert Tosh Plumley in Michigan. They're in Utica, Michigan, 23-mile on Van Dyke. They were bringing drugs onto my farm with airplanes and balloons. Back then, I was offered the Rochester Airport when I married my second wife. That land was her and her husband's land, the airport in Rochester, Michigan. They were flying drugs in there, the bikers and the CIA and the FBI. And when I divorced her, they continued to pour the drugs onto my farm, on my new farm after I divorced her. And when I became aware of it, I put an end to it. And then my fiance, Kiki, was murdered, and Kiki Camarino was murdered at the same time. Thank you for that coffee. My friend here just gave me a coffee. Could you turn off this air conditioner behind me, please? And turn the fan above me on, please. I stopped that gun and drug trade being run by a real pharmacist in Utica, Michigan, that the police knew he was running drugs and selling illegal drugs behind me in a house on my farm that Trump's tax attorney gave me. The Mazzaro family gave me that farm, and it was 7 square miles on M53 and 23 Mile Road. I think you've seen it on Google Earth, Greg.
Yeah, I took a picture of it there and saved it. Yeah. Big piece of property.
Yeah, it was the only forest left there. And when I left, I told them they should turn it into a park, but they didn't. They turned it into an industrial complex. And then it turned into a ghost town industrial complex a year after they built it. So
and that's where you found out that most of the drug runners don't look like thugs. They tend to sound and act like businessmen.
Well, no, they are. The real drug dealers are the senators. When I stopped the drug trade, I realized I stopped all the senators, and I stopped our own CIA from running drugs to Mexico, and they usually they'd like to collect money, but when the dealers didn't have money to pay for the guns, they would pay whatever money they had and then include drugs as payment for the illegal guns the senators were selling. I don't exist. The drug dealer, he got 5 minutes in jail. I went to jail for a year. And then they gave you this concocted story about White Boy Rick, this little 15-year-old kid I knew up in Whitmore Lake in Ann Arbor. A couple of years later, I worked for Webb Trucking and lived with the Jackson family, the Black Jackson family, and Tina Turner's husband, Ike Turner. White Boy Rick overheard me talking to Jackson and Turner when I wasn't driving a truck or playing music. I was talking about the drug trade. I stopped back in Utica, Michigan, and this little 15-year-old kid overheard me, and then the FBI used him, and I guess they put him in jail, and they wrote a book and a movie to hide me, but he didn't have anything to do with those guns and drugs. I stopped it, and they murdered my fiance.
Connections to White Boy Rick, but then also you had connections to Nichols and McVeigh that were buying and selling drugs there on that
they
property.
Were buying their LSD and cocaine off of that farm for years.
Those are the names of the people that supposedly did the Oklahoma
bombing.
City bombing.
Same people. Mm-hmm. Same people.
Now, speaking of Nichols, now this is going to be interesting. I discovered something just yesterday, and I took a picture of it. I'm going to read just a little bit here because we just had Wallace moderate the presidential debate, and of course,
I don't like that.
In your life, Wallace.
I don't like Wallace or Anderson Cooper because those families kidnapped me and then kidnapped my kids. Cooper kidnapped my kids. Anderson and Wallace kidnapped me 30 years prior.
Now watch this. Watch this, how this goes together with Wallace was the people that turned you into rapists as a kid. Your first grade teacher was the Wicked Witch of the West. The actress Margaret Hamilton, I think's her name, played the Wicked Witch of the West.
Yeah, in my school, she called herself Wallace.
Yeah, and then and then when you look it up, you find out that the Scarecrow is also a Wallace, so that makes a lot of sense.
And then when I looked it up, the Wallace family really was at my school when I was kidnapped, and the Long family, and that was Huey P. Long's family, and then Osborne was Governor Osborne of Michigan, and on and on and on.
Yeah, and Wallace was another
these
governor.
People run the media in Michigan, along with the Barr family and the Osborne family.
Now watch how this connects you. Watch how this connects, because it's going to connect to Nichols too. Check this out. Okay. Right. Jack the Ripper, Lighthearted Friend is a 1996 book by Richard Wallace, okay, in which Wallace proposed a theory that Lewis Carroll and his colleague Bain were responsible for the Jack the Ripper murders. So they're saying that author Lewis Carroll was Jack the Ripper, and they wrote children's books. Okay, yeah. So this is Wallace saying this, and then get this: Jack the Ripper's victim, I think the first victim, if I'm not mistaken, was Mary Ann Nichols, and you were just talking about Nichols.
I find that interesting, seeing as Wallace kidnapped me with Osborne and Anderson and Nick Andrews. And they murdered little kids in Oakland County and threw them on my family's properties for 20 years, up until the day I was detained for Jimmy Hoffa's murder by the FBI. Before they detained Chucky O'Brien, they detained me. And I grew up next door to the O'Brien family and the Barr family. And it's just interesting how you got White Boy Rick, he's got a movie, and you got all these movies about Jimmy Hoffa. And Roseanne Barr has been in Hollywood pretending her and Kathy O'Brien are me, the kid kidnapped. I was a boy. They were kidnapping boys and girls. But Roseanne Barr was never kidnapped, but she sure did a good cover story hiding my truth of who the Oakland County child killers really were. And she did that on Graham's Media. They're still doing it to this day, aren't they?
Yeah, which the CEO is Emily Barr.
Yeah, and that's my neighbor from Oakland County, Michigan. The Barr family.
So you were also abducted there by Osborne, and I found some interesting things about Osborne this week too. Talked about it there I didn't put it on YouTube, but I made a Facebook live video about it. And Osborne goes all the way back to the peerage of the royal family in England.
Yeah, I'm sure he does, because Ozzy Osbourne come over, and I was a musician, and I owned a worldwide publishing company in London. I used Stationers Hall for the things I did worldwide. Canada, it was Astra, and New York, it was ASCAP BMI, and I had a federal publishing license from Foley Federal Court in New York, signed by Morton Gould, and I knew Martin Gould. He was a friend of mine for many years, until his death, and I owned 28,000 worldwide entertainment contracts as they blew up the contracts in the Twin Towers. And Bush said my name, sitting in that kindergarten class, just like the one I was kidnapped out of by 5 governors.
Clear as day. He said it clear as day. There's no mistaking about it.
I know. And my uncle, Mr. Mills, was filming them. And my girlfriend at Community Services had just put them in that kindergarten class. And then he blamed another family I was online with on Yahoo Chat that day, Ronnie Carmel, who owns the Fast Forward video stores. He said that Ronnie Carmel, a little Christian kid, paid for the 12 Muslims to be trained by my friend down in Florida, the Voss family, Debbie Voss and her husband, to train the 12 non-existent Muslims whose passports were found in the dust of 9/11 the next day. There's a complete concocted story after they stole my trademark and my name.
And his family was from Iraq, and so they turned the story around and then went right after Iraq. Absolutely amazing.
Right, yeah. And his father was a policeman in Oakland County, just like L. Brooks Patterson, who covered up my kidnap and the murders of the kids in my neighborhood, thrown on my properties, beat up, dismembered, raped, killed, threw them on Gardner Street. I'm the Gardner family, It's unbelievable how the Oakland County Police got millions of dollars to solve murders of children that they turned a blind eye to. They turned a blind eye to these murders for 7 decades so they could keep collecting the federal money. And I'm the Brooks family. His name is L. Brooks Patterson. His kid, Oglesby, was my friend. We went to school together. He was sitting outside the house I was kidnapped and escaped from. I'm 4 years old, running naked across the street, crying, bloodied from being slapped, and this L. Brooks Patterson is laughing at me. Never made out a police report. It's unbelievable. And then you got all these theories about how it happened, and I'm the real thing, and it really happened to me. And nobody knows I exist because the Oakland County and Macomb County Police Departments covered my life up. I stopped Tiki Camarino and Robert Tosh Plumley's drugs being run by a pharmacist in Utica, Michigan, a real pharmacist. He had a pharmacological license. He's the guy that runs a drugstore and distributes the prescriptions from the doctors. He was running a drug trade behind my house on my farm. And like I said, Greg, 5 minutes he went to jail. I went to jail for a year for stopping him. And then they gave you White Boy Rick.
Yeah, well, right there on Emily Barr's
and this is how Graham Media. This is how Graham Media in Detroit, WJR News and Channel 7, this is how they really work.
And this is why you have Marie Osborne on there right now. You have Marie Osborne on a radio show right there on Graham Media there, WJR.
Yeah, and they make lots of money hiding people like me.
Did Rush Limbaugh get his start on WJR also?
I really don't know, but he was on Detroit talk radio forever when I was a kid. And then he actually sold the drugs to my brother-in-law, Mark Mothersbaugh, when I was playing music, and then he had to end his career. And they told you he had to go clean up his act, back then. As my my brother-in-law Mark was murdered. Essentially, he was murdered with bad drugs.
So for the listener there, just to put this together, the Osbournes were they go all the way back to England, but they were the people that abducted you. We had Osbourne right there on WJR radio right now, still is to this day.
Yeah.
We have Osbourne running the sex crimes division of the FBI. Definitely not a coincidence.
Right.
Well, you have British Osbournes coming over here, knighted from the Queen, giving us our music.
Yeah, they run the FBI, they run your media, and it's all coming out of London, and I've known that all my life. She knights them. The Beatles come here, give you Haight-Ashbury drugs. Yellow Submarine. All four of my wives, their father, who were dismembered and murdered over the past 37 years, their fathers were special forces on submarines in the Navy in World War II, and afterwards. And to give people an idea, special forces run the CIA. All right. And the Navy funds the CIA. So when I say that my wife's fathers were CIA operators in special forces, that really matters. And all four of my wives were dismembered and murdered, and not even a single obituary for any of them, because they're hiding my truth of Osbourne and the four other governors that kidnapped me at birth and murdered kids in Oakland County. And these same people murdered the Kennedy family. And they're hiding that in me. And then I'm related to the presidents on the United States money. And I'm also related to the Queen via my family members, the Byrd family. So I was born into this family who kicked King George off the Delaware Bridge in 1776, became the country's presidents, authored the Declaration and the Bill of Rights. Then I'm born, in 53, 150 years later, 140 years later, and the Queen attacked me just like she attacked my mother's family and my mother's family. And the London throne has never stopped attacking the founders of this country. And they're attacking me again today with Kamala Harris. They attacked me when they murdered Terry and my wife Victoria on the Manning Ranch with Obama out of Kenya. And people don't realize that Kenya is the Queen's possession.
Just like Jamaica.
Yeah, just like Jamaica is the Queen's possession. And Kamala, her real name is Emhoff nowadays, and she doesn't use Emhoff. She's using my family's name, and she isn't my family, the Harris family, who's in the Smithsonian. She's no part of my family. So she's my name Squier, and Hugh has already been stolen, and now you have Biden and Kamala stealing my mother's name and her mother's name, so they can be in the White House. Now, I don't blame Trump for what the Republican senators did to me in '57 and growing up, and how they hid the Oakland County child killers and the murder of the Kennedy family. Trump didn't have no part to do with what the Graham family was doing to me. But Trump profited in other ways that he's probably not even aware of. And I voted for Trump the first time, and I'm going to vote for him again, just so people are clear about that. I don't hold these things against Donald Trump. He inherited the Democrats, the Independent Party, and the Republicans, and Jesse Ventura's Green Party. All of them stole from me at birth, all of them. None of them are a legitimate party. If they're all going to attack little kids and cover up the murder of little kids, they don't deserve to be in the White House. This country needs a complete reformation of its political parties, and I don't think it, I know it. But whether or not that'll happen in my lifetime, I don't know. And if you remember, Donald Trump wasn't any party. He chose to be in the Republican Party. So I don't blame him for what people like Wallace or Garrett or Osborne did to me in '57. Donald Trump was maybe 20 years old back then, you know.
And it shouldn't, it needs to be said a lot more often, because this story really needed to have been said at the time. And now you had your fiance, Terry Heath, or wait, were you married to her yet? No, you were still fiance.
No, we never got married. She was murdered. Right. She was murdered a week before our planned marriage on my birthday. I found her dead in our garage on my birthday.
Now, Terry Heath, her last name was Heath, just like, and she looks like Sarah Palin, and Sarah Palin's last name was Heath.
Sarah Heath is Sarah Heath Palin.
5 years later, after she was murdered.
And Sarah Heath lives in Alaska, and Terry Heath, her family lived in California and Washington, not up in as far as Alaska, but down in Canada and California. It's the same family.
Yeah, there's no way that's a coincidence. She gets murdered 5 years
She was murdered as they ran against Obama. That's correct. And then I found my wife Victoria 7 years later, missing her ears and her throat slit on Halloween Day. And she was murdered. And one woman was murdered in Mossheim on our farm. And then I gave her CPR, got her back to life, and they murdered her a second time in Greenville at Tacoma Hospital. That was Terry Heath. And then Victoria, 7 years later, they murdered her in Johnson City's hospital towards Virginia.
Yeah, and her name is Victoria Milan, and now that's why you have Melania Trump, which I don't think is a coincidence either.
No, none of this is a coincidence. The Pope took my middle name, Francis, the communist Pope. I was born and baptized Catholic, and Huey Lewis stole my first name, Billy Squier my last, and we've said this in a lot of videos. As they stole my trademark Bottom Line, Steve Austin and Jesse Ventura would come out screaming, and that's the bottom line. Drinking Budweisers, and Bud was my father-in-law, and Hubert, I'm Hubert. Hubert distributes all the beer, Miller, Bud, and I bought a house for Miller, and Miller wrote a book and said he killed Hoffa, and all this is complete, it's lies.
Now, you wanted to talk a lot more about Jimmy Hoffa today and how that went down. Your mother-in-law was with Jimmy Hoffa the night that
I had a mother-in-law who was always trying to go to bed with me. I think she wanted to play saxophone in my band, Bottom Line, back then in the 60s, early 69, 70. She was with Jimmy Hoffa that night, and I'd been with him that morning. And the FBI detained me for his murder 6 hours after he disappeared at the Sly Fox while with my mother-in-law. And there's a whole story that goes along with that. That I'm not going to go to in this video, but when I stopped that drug trade with the pharmacist in Utica, Michigan at that Rexall drugstore, I believe it was a Rexall in Utica, Michigan back in around 1979, I realized that the person in that drugstore filling out these phony prescriptions from nurses who used to work for doctors like Dr. O'Brien or Dr. Kissel, the nurses were no longer employed by these doctors, but they would steal prescription pads and they would write prescriptions just like as if they were still working for the doctor. The nurses write the doctor's prescriptions because he's too busy to do it some days. So they were making visits to the doctor's offices, like Dr. O'Brien's office or the Kissel doctor's office or whatever doctor they had worked for, and stealing prescription pads. They knew where the doctor kept them. They used to write them. They signed his name, the whole 9 yards. And these were my mother-in-law's friends, and I'm not going to name names. The police department in Utica, Michigan, and Macomb County, they covered up these nurses writing phony prescriptions for 30 years. I mean, I know these nurses were doing this for at least 20 years. They would brag to me about it. And if the police ever look into this, I'll tell them exactly which nurses, where they lived, and what drugstores they were forging prescriptions in. Well, my mother-in-law had one of those forged prescriptions when Jimmy Hoffa disappeared, and those prescriptions were for pills that knock you out. Interesting, huh?
Well, that sure sounds pretty
And I'm not going to name
suspicious.
names. I'm not going to name names. I'm not going to say the nurse or how they were related, Greg. You can put that in your book, and it's truth. But what I believe, well, what I've known happened is that same family writing forged prescriptions with the pharmacy guy I had stopped the CIA guns and drugs to Mexico, Hank. He went to jail for 5 minutes. Well, he was authorizing those prescriptions and filling them in the drugstore in Utica from nurses who were no longer nurses, and they were prescriptions not authorized by the doctor. They were just forged by the nurses. My mother-in-law had one of those forged prescriptions on the night Jimmy Hoffa disappeared, and I know she did.
For a sleeping pill, something that would knock you out to go to sleep?
Oh, I knocked you out just like that. Yeah, it was a Mickey. You know, you put it in somebody's food or drink and they're out.
And she was with him that night.
Yeah.
And yet the FBI still isn't talking to you. They detained you that day. No one still wants to do an interview with you about this. You were detained before Chucky O'Brien.
They've written books and made movies, and I'm always omitted from all of them. And it's real, to me, it's just really strange. The Oakland County child killing stopped on the day the FBI detained me for Hoffa's disappearance.
Yeah. Well, because,
Never had another kid murdered.
Right, because there was too much focus on that area.
And then after Jimmy Hoffa disappeared, then they tried to set me up with that pharmacist illegal gun and drug trade from Robert Tosh Plumley. And then all this ties in with I own Baker College at birth, and I'm the Baker family. And you've researched this, and you know what I'm telling you is truth.
Oh, there's a lot we could go into with Bakers. But then right after all this, then you were working with, you were doing warranty work for Shelby Service Center, something you created.
I had a partner, Dale Karpus, and our secretary was Janet Bauman.
And the two people, I think one might have worked for you, and the other one was just sort of a friend that came around from time to time. Both of those guys were in books about the murder.
Miller, I actually lived with Miller. And then I had bought horses and land from Miller. And the land that was bought from Miller was actually stolen by the Rothschild family. They married my brother and divorced him as soon as I and my father signed off the land that we bought from the Miller family. The Rothschild family divorced my brother and took the land, and the land was worth like $1 million an acre. It was commercial property on Gratiot Avenue. Gratiot Avenue is the biggest main thoroughway coming out of Detroit, and it was commercial land. And the Rothschild family from Chicago stole that. Jim Mars would go around the country saying that there were no Rothschilds in America, but that wasn't a truthful statement. They've been here, and they're still here. They live down in Florida, the Rothschild family.
Yeah, they exist. They're just not the Illuminati that, Jones and all them are calling them.
No, Jones and WikiLeaks, Julian Assange and Snowden, this is complete disinformation hiding my life, along with L. Brooks Patterson, and I'm the Brooks family. His name is Brooks for a reason. You know I'm related to Mickey Rooney and Frank Sinatra, and my mother-in-law, we used to see Sinatra in New York when he sang in New York, you know. That's why she was always trying to have sex with me, even though I was married with her daughter, and she wanted to play her saxophone in my band because she wanted to get closer to the Sinatra family.
Absolutely.
And she couldn't through me.
Yeah, Sinatra married Ava Gardner, and Ava Gardner was was one of your aunts by marriage.
Right. The Gardner family is my family. That's correct.
Mm-hmm.
And then my inheritance was stolen, which was millions and millions of dollars. My mother's sister stole that. And then my mother told me she was going to leave it to me. And then 3 hours later, she was dead. And I don't really want to go into that. But I'm pretty certain my mother was murdered that night. The night we buried her husband, someone murdered her. But there's no murder case. And it was her murder would have been over the money she was going to give to me because my older brother and two of her sisters stole my inheritance, and she knew it. She told me on her front porch before I left to go back from Tennessee. She says, "I know my sisters and my first son stole your inheritance." And she told me she was sorry, and she said she was going to leave her inheritance to me. And then 2 hours later, she was dead.
Yeah, they've stolen all of your money on more than one occasion, so I get
Right.
that. And it was probably a pretty good fortune going back through the Harrises, through the Fullers, and all of their inventions from the geodesic
Well,
mill, the Van Pattens, built trucks.
I owned all the tax-free municipal bonds for a city in Michigan. They were left to me, and then my oldest brother and my mother's sister stole that stock from me.
Mm-hmm.
There's no telling how much that was worth. It was the stock for a city. And my grandfather left that to me. I never received my inheritance.
And that's why names like that is why you have Kamala Harris. That was your Harris family there, and that's why you have Kamala Harris today, who won't use her Imhoff name. She wants that Harris name because that's a famous.
No, she wants the Harris name because the Harris steam thrashers and Massey Ferguson and even Jackson is the Harris family on the 20. That's my family, and Kamala's family is not my family, but she wants to. I don't know, what do you call it, snowball off the name so she can get elected. And this is a big con. And before her, it was Obama, a big con. Bam Bam and Pebbles.
Yeah, another not
Bam
really
Bam
black
and Pebbles
person
from Hanna-Barbera. You know, they're
yeah.
still in the White House.
And he's another not really black person from Kenya, which was another of the Queen's colonies.
Greg, if you notice, they're all attorneys. Obama and Michelle were attorneys. And Kamala Emhoff and her husband, Mr. Emhoff, are both entertainment attorneys. And my trademark, my international trademark, Bottom Line, and my federal publishing license, Bottom Line, an entertainment license with 28,000 entertainment contracts was stolen from me as I was murdered. Not once. I was murdered over and over. And people who knew me, I was a publisher for the band that wrote "We Didn't Start the Fire." I was one of his publishers. He even named the people that in his song that attempted to murder me, Pasternak and Marilyn Monroe, in the same sentence. And I used to deliver to
Vargas,
who airbrushed Marilyn Monroe on the Playboys. And Pasternak attempted to murder me before I was 18. And he just come out of nowhere and attempted to murder me.
Yeah, and it was right there in the song.
And I actually went to Beaumont Hospital in Royal Oak off of 4th Street at Woodward there. And the doctors who brought me back to life, they say this guy tried to kill you. But they lost all the records, and so did the Oakland County Police Department. So they threw away records in a murder case. Not once, not twice, 7 times in my life. They just throw murder cases out. The hospital and the police departments. And they did the same thing when they murdered Terry Heath. They called her murder a suicide, and they called my wife's dismemberment and murder natural causes. People's ears don't fall off from natural causes.
And they wouldn't even look into it after you brought it to their attention.
Hers didn't fall off. They were cut off. All right. And then it took me 5 years to get a murder case opened. I got a murder case open, but they don't solve the murder cases by design because the police are part of the murder. They're not going to turn themselves in.
Right. Yeah. And after one of them's, after you tried to report the murder for one of them, the entire police department was arrested.
Right, for selling drugs.
They were all criminals. Yeah.
For selling drugs, Craig.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I had nothing to do with their arrest, nothing at all. The FBI arrested that police department who lied on a murder case on the Manning farm, and Manning co-created the JFK archives with my history teacher, Garrison.
Yeah, imagine that. And it's called the Warren Report, and you're from Warren.
Right, Warren, Michigan. That was my family's farm back in the 1800s, yeah.
Which, once again, is why we just had Elizabeth Warren running for president.
Right, and that's my little sister's name, Elizabeth. And we're from Warren. The city of Warren is my family's farm, our homestead. And Centerline, which is the Abrams tank plant. And I come from a historical family. Massey Ferguson, Harris Steam Thrashers. I'm Jackson and Hamilton and Grant. Amo the Buffalo Man is the Chase family. Chase is on the $10,000 bill. Those are my these are my family members, Greg.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would tell you, since I always keep so many of those in my pocket, I would pull one out and tell you, but I don't want it to speak.
Well, I was with Mr. Chase digging holes in Marine City with him before he was murdered. When he was murdered, they changed the name of Marine City to China Township. And this is what this is how they go to extremes to hide my truth. They rename entire cities. I'm the Harris, and Houston is in Harris County, Texas.
Right.
And the Rose family in Texas has been the governor there. And my family built those counties and cities a long time ago, before I was born. I'm Hugh from Harris.
Right. Which is why you had a Supreme Court justice murdered there.
Scalia.
Yeah.
Yeah, and my only wife who's still alive, she's a Libra. And she had a Supreme Court justice in her family, Mr. Westhouse. I had a Supreme Court justice in my family, Mr. Fuller.
Yeah,
When I divorced her, it split the government in half.
And there were plenty of Supreme Court cases dealing with steam tractors, Osborne versus Fuller, and back in the 1900s.
That's the Queen of London attacking my family here in America. That's correct.
Yeah.
And every generation in my family, they've attacked my grandmother. They attacked my great-grandmother with Lincoln. I mean, when they murdered Lincoln, she was his guest. They murdered my mother's family, my grandmother, and her brother and 3 of her sisters. Then they murdered my Aunt Annabelle's children in her driveway with a semi. Then they kidnapped me when I was born, and then they kidnapped my daughter when she was 7. My daughter had her first kid when she was 12 or 13. She was raped. And all these people are loyal to the Queen of England. They attack every generation of my family. And then your news tells you that tells you that she's your ally and good friend as she takes over your White House and media. And this has been going on since long before they murdered Lincoln.
Yeah, and part of her media now is Netflix, and that's why she's got Obama and Susan Rice over there running Netflix.
Right, and Rice, where they covered up the Oakland County child killings, anybody can look into it, and the Rice family ran the biggest mall in Oakland County, the Troy Mall. Yeah. The Oakland County Mall is run by the Rice family, and I don't think it, I know it.
And this is why the FBI is being run by families today. Mafia, basically, in a sense. Mafia is loyal to the Queen.
If I try to make out police reports against Osborne or Wallace or Long and these governors that kidnapped me, they'll tell me, it's just coincidence. Families don't run the FBI. And that's a lie. You know that's a lie, Greg.
Sure.
They're a mafia. Families are a mafia. The mafia put the mafia in jail in my life.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, other family mafias put the Italian mafia in prison.
Now you have Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. To me, they're nothing more than a mafia coming out of half of it comes out of a foreign country. The other mafia comes out of my life. You know.
Yeah, unbelievable.
You know,
Now,
a bunch of pedophiles are attacking the kids in my family every generation. And Thomas Jefferson, he's my ancestor. So is Jackson, so is Grant, so is Hamilton, so is Chase, so is Morgan.
And Albert Pike.
The Queen, yeah, Albert Pike. And we're the bad guys, the KKK. The KKK was originally created because we didn't want the Queen and the kings of Europe bringing slaves here. We told them, get the slaves out. We didn't want slaves here. Now we're the bad guy.
Yeah, no, that's not the history you're going to read in your textbooks. This is a history that was passed down to you.
My family never owned any slaves. Kamala Harris is not my family, and she was never a slave. Her mother was never a slave. Kamala Harris, her family ran the slaves here for the Queen of England.
Yeah, her own dad wrote a book saying so. So
yeah,
that's not, we're not making that up. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is the Queen once again using racism against the Americans who created America to take over the White House. And then she's going to try and destroy me even further. She's already stolen my name, Hugh Squier. And the Pope stole my middle name, Francis. They stole my worldwide trademark and entertainment business, bottom line. Before I even turned 18, they stole all that from me. My name, my trademark, and Weiner and Associates did that next to Dire Straits' house. And then they all go to London and the Queen knights them. And then they come back here, they run the media, they run the music, and they continue to rape my kids, murder people like Hoffa, JFK, and all his brothers, and then they blame it on Oswald, who had nothing to do with it. And I'm the living proof of that.
Who went to military training at Camp Pendleton with Osborne. Oswald and Osborne together.
Yeah, they were bunkmates. Yeah, that's correct. And then before him, it was Elvis Presley, and my family was writing the songs Elvis sang in his
also
movie.
At Camp Pendleton, yeah.
Right.
And Osborne then obviously was a pedophile, and Oswald was.
I used to meet with the Mills Publishing Company and the Bourne Publishing Company in New York at publishers' meetings.
Yeah.
And then who you know who's doing this? Gay pedophiles. Alice.
Yeah, it's interesting that there may be possibly a connection between Oswald and David Ferry, who was a known convicted pedophile.
Yeah, and Osborne is a pedophile. He just never got put in jail because L. Brooks Patterson hid it. You know, right. And they can't hide it from me. I'm the little kid they kidnapped. They use me in porno movies, and I don't think it. I know it.
Well, that's why when you Google the name Victoria Milan, it comes up as an escort service.
Right. Yeah. Then that's those families trying to make me and my wives look like we're the bad people and we're not.
Yeah. All set up by design. It's real obvious to me exactly what's going on.
They steal property, money. They kill kids, throw them on my property. And this is the Queen's Knights doing these things.
Yeah.
You know, all my life. They attacked me at birth. They attacked my mother at birth. They attacked her mother at birth. They attacked her mother at birth. And they've been doing this all the way back to when they killed Kennedy. And I'm not a pipe dream, and I'm not how do you say it? A theory. This is my life. I've lived these things.
Yeah.
And the police. Yeah. The police are hiding people stealing the White House as they murder your presidents.
Makes sense why they do this, you know, by a number code too, because that's something that comes out of the Queen. This is not.
No, this has been done. They kidnapped me at 4, and they did it on purpose at 4 on the very day they murdered Admiral Byrd and cut my father's hands off. This is the same thing. The fires here in California were being set. The Paradise Fire, the fire in Napa Valley. I visited the Napa Valley Wine Museum, which is Pratt and Behringer, and Pratt and Behringer cut my father's hands off on the day I was kidnapped at 4. by 5
Yeah.
governors who tortured me, raped me, and used me in porno movies.
And since today was the anniversary of the Las Vegas shooting, why don't you mention for a minute why that happened and where you
Just one
were when that
moment.
went down?
Just one moment. When I went to the top of Napa Valley to the museum, Pratt and Behringer, my 2 neighbors in Detroit, Pratt and Behringer, who cut my father's hands off at Divco where he made milk trucks. All right.
Yeah.
On the day I was kidnapped. All right. I get to that museum and the whole mountain went up in smoke. By the time I got to the bottom of the mountain and turned around and looked, the whole mountain was on fire. That's
Right.
done on purpose, Greg. It's arson.
Because I know they follow you around and they commit these big, huge disasters.
And then they blame because they run the FBI and the CIA, and you have a General Wallace, you have a General Anderson. These people start the fires and then they investigate them, and then they say, "Oh, it's the power company's fault," and that's all bullshit, Greg. That's just bullshit.
Right. Well, that fits in perfectly with Las Vegas because they were following you around for that too.
Yeah, that's right. The Mandalay and the Vandalay and Kramer. Yeah, I grew up with Kramer. That's correct, Greg.
Right. Well, you were there that day when it happened. You just
I
drove
had just
in.
got there. I was there. I had just pulled in after opening a murder case and talking to L. Brooks Patterson office. I drive into Vegas, and bam, you had the shooting as I got there. That's correct.
People really need to start putting this together. I mean, you were arrested by the FBI or detained.
Because mainstream media are the very people that kidnapped me and murdered the Kennedys.
Yeah, but the normal person should start really thinking this through and realizing they're being lied to. I mean, you were detained by the FBI for Jimmy Hoffa. You were there on the day of the Las Vegas shooting. You go to the Pratt and Behringer
they murdered
Museum
my
and
wives,
it goes
Greg.
up in smoke.
Greg, that's why they murdered my wives. There's nobody to collaborate. What I'm saying.
Yeah, you drive past the Robin Williams home and they kill him. You go, you get back, and then
I couldn't wake up at Rand Paul's house, so I get put in a hospital at Squire Boone, and the guy writing my book, Jim Mars, is murdered. That's correct.
Yeah, and then that guy attacks who you just said there, Ron Paul.
Blindsided the doctor, the anesthesiologist, blindsided Rand Paul. He punched Rand Paul.
Yeah,
and I got put in the hospital because I couldn't wake up. And Rand Paul's great-grandfather was my business manager at Bottom Line, New York.
Right.
And he sold me out to de Blasio, the Russian mafia in New York.
And all the way back as a kid, you had Roseanne Barr covering up your childhood.
Right.
I mean, it's unbelievable.
It wasn't her as much as it was her mother. Her mother had crocodiles. The story, when I was a little kid, my dead mother in the Weeblos, they put me in the Weeblos after they raped me. I was put, not in the Cub Scouts, in the Weeblos. Okay. And then I had a woman den mother who took me over to Roseanne Barr's house. Showed me the crocodiles in the basement.
And do I remember correctly, didn't Roseanne Barr's mother chop up her husband and feed him to those crocodiles in the basement?
I'm pretty sure one of the Barr women did that to her husband where I grew up in Oakland County. It was headlines in the paper, but if you Google it, since Attorney General Barr was appointed, you find nothing.
Right.
They changed the news stories overnight. Your news comes from nowadays Wikipedia, and people just change the stories there anytime they feel like it.
Well, I know who's changing a lot of them because they're coordinating them together.
Yeah, I know. I pointed it out to you enough.
Yeah, and they're making them fit real good.
Yeah. No, they'll change dates and names. They'll change states, dates, names. They'll change a date from 71 to 81. They'll change a state from Detroit to Idaho. They don't care, and they do it right out in the open, and nobody says a word. Everybody's too high.
Here's another one. You had at one time when you went down to Florida for a while, you stopped by and watched a ball game at a high school just because you were bored one day and you were driving by and you saw them playing, and you took a few pictures. Left,
the Palmettos. I took camera shots of all the little kids playing Little League baseball and videos because I owned a publishing company. I was going to go back to my publishing company and put these little
parts
kids
and
playing
movies and all that,
playing baseball and football, and
But that school ended up
in
being
magazines,
Parkland.
you know.
And yeah,
What's that?
yeah, it just, well, you'd taken pictures there at the Parkland school, and then the Marjory Stoneman Douglas school there in Parkland.
Yeah,
And
no,
then,
no, all of these are related to my life, Greg.
yeah, and
All
then
the
they had a
major
big shooting
shootings.
there.
Yeah, and that's how they hide me. It's just like White Boy Rick. White Boy Rick had nothing to do with drugs. He was a little snot-nosed 15-year-old sitting around listening to me talk to Ike Turner and Michael Jackson's family. He was 15, just got his first car, still going to high school. He didn't know the first thing about drugs, and I had just stopped the biggest drug trade in the country.
Yeah. Well, this is enough information to blow anybody's mind.
Well,
Hugh.
this is how they hide me, Greg. And then when White Boy Rick, when I was working at Webb, I was living with Mr. Frisbee, and Frisbee worked for Morrison the same as I did, driving truck. And then who'd I live with there? I lived with Connie, the sheriff's wife, and they owned the Cougar on the Ford Cougars, as you got John Cougar Mellencamp, and I was his publisher.
Yeah.
You know, but I don't exist. And they blew up my publishing company and stole my trademark, and I don't exist. And all the media is run by the very families that kidnapped me and killed little kids around me my entire life. Anderson, Cooper, Osborne, Graham. These people murdered little kids around me, and they murdered the Kennedys, and they're running your media. And the Queen knights them. And
Yeah, it's easy to see how the FBI is hiding some of these names around these murders too, because
But their own names. The Osborne family runs the sex crime division at the FBI since I was kidnapped.
Yeah, yeah.
And raped at 4.
Right. And Gina Osborne, who did another.
It's telling me my internet connection is unstable now, so they don't want.
I bet it is.
Yeah, so I'll repeat it again. The very family that kidnapped me, Osborne, when I was 4 and used me in porno movies, runs the sex crime division at the FBI to this day. I lived on Hoover Street. Wallace, Long, Anderson, Andrews, Osborne, and Hall tortured and raped me in Osborne's basement, and Osborne runs the FBI sex crime division right now.
Now, here's more evidence to go along with that. Gina Hall ran a division of the sex crimes part of the FBI.
The Hall family. And then when
No, listen. Gina Osborne. And Gina Osborne left that. Okay, she went and became a true crimes broadcaster. And so she's out there hiding some of the other murders that we've talked about.
Right. No,
it's real obvious what's going on.
No, they hide me and everything, Greg. And they do it right out of Hollywood, right in the news. You have Anderson raped me. Cooper raped my daughter, kidnapped her off her bus and raped her. She had her first kid at 13 or 12.
You get a D.B. Cooper story, right?
Yeah, and then you get D.B. Cooper, and I went to school with D.B. Cooper, and he died in a car wreck when we were 17. Then they give you D.B. Cooper. Cooper rapes my daughter. Then they give you D.B. Cooper. And it's just one story after another. And then you got the Bundys when I moved out here. Well, the FBI had named D.B. Cooper off after my high school friend, D.B. Cooper. Or after the D.B. Cooper that kidnapped my daughter and raped her at 7. All right. Or you get the Bundys. You got Ted Bundy's at the same time.
Your sound disappeared, Hugh. It might be your microphone. Your battery might be going out.
No,
sound
it's
disappeared
not out.
For a minute.
No, it's because I put my hands up here. It stop again?
Yeah, for a second there.
I does not do that. The same people at the FBI, Osborne, who runs the sex crime division, they named Ted Bundy. When I moved here, you got the Bundys. You got Clive and Bundy in the mail here, the next city over from me. The FBI tried to get me to pass out videos to get all the patriots to come here so they could take their guns away. That's Ted Bundy. That's a fictitious name the Osbornes at the sex crime division gave to a guy who was raping little women and kids. Okay, no different than D.B. Cooper is a fictitious name of my friend and the guy who kidnapped and raped my daughter off her school bus. Who gave them the names? the Osborne family at the FBI.
Yeah, and they feed off these stories and they
And
keep
all
it
the
going. You
media,
have Bureau
Anderson,
Land Management.
Anderson raped me, Cooper raped my daughter. My daughter's mother was Nancy. You got CNN, they doubled my wife, Anderson, Cooper, 360. And all
Yeah.
the media is like that. Garrett helped murder my attorney and my wife, right out of Obama's White House.
Right. Well, back to your Bundy story there. That was on the Bureau of Land Management land, BLM, and then they fed off of that to give you Black
And that's
Lives
my
Matter.
trademark, bottom line.
Yeah, bottom line.
Exactly.
While you were married to Mary, BLM.
Mary, that's right, BLM. Yeah. And because I'm family of presidents, nobody can put this together. But my family made your country. They named the different bureaus, you know. They marked me with the names, just like the Pope Francis took my middle name. His name is not Francis. He's covering up my story too. He loves gays. Oh, it's just another sin. We have to forgive those poor gay people who murdered your president. You understand this, Greg? This is a one big cover up.
Yeah.
And it's worldwide. I'm a worldwide publisher. They stole my name and trademark in every country on earth. And my family wrote the Declaration of Independence. You understand what's going on?
Sure. Well, everybody that seems to...
Too bad nobody watches these videos and they won't let me have 5 seconds on a talk show.
Right, right.
You know, it's just a shame. They're stealing your whole country right out from under you. And I'm the truth of that. I'm the living truth of that, and nobody listens.
This is big league truth. Even back in, you had the witness O'Donnell, who saw Kennedy assassinated, supposedly. That's
Now, you cut out, Greg, and I don't know why. I'm going to end this video right here. If you can still hear me, you're cut out.
Big witness.
Okay.
O'Donnell that. Oh, and that's O'Donnell.
All right.
Supposedly that's the show.
Greg, you cut out here because they're blocking our connection. My internet connection is unstable, which is just unbelievable. So that entire thing, say again.
Okay. Well, O'Donnell was the witness who saw President Kennedy killed, according to the story. And now on every news network, you have an O'Donnell.
Right,
all
right.
Of them
And this is no different.
Even conservative news.
Right. And this is no different than Osborne running the FBI and Wallace, who kidnapped me, and Long and Barr. And these people, these families right out of Detroit that kidnapped me at Florida, murdered kids for 20 years and threw them on my properties before murdering.
When the president attacks Rosie O'Donnell, it's to pretend like, to make it look like that he's attacking the people who attacked Kennedy. I see what he's doing.
I don't know. All I know is
I think that's the game.
All I know is President Trump hasn't helped me in anything. Nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
He appointed Attorney General Barr, and I need an Attorney General to look into my truth of my wife's murders. I got 4 murdered wives. Nobody's in jail. And the Barr family ain't going to do that.
Yeah, well, because Emily Barr's running grand media.
Donald Trump being president has hindered me more than helped me.
Right, right. We don't have much choice but to vote
but
for him.
I think he's just stupid to that, Greg. Donald Trump grew up in New York. I think he knew the bottom line. He knew Welcome Back Kotter and Epstein, the principal always hollered at. But he didn't know that, well, maybe he did, maybe he didn't. But I don't think Donald Trump's deliberately trying to mess me up. But I can tell you this, Bob Bolton and I made airplanes together when I was 20.
Right.
And we also built the assembly line for the Dodge Shadow, the Chrysler Dodge Shadow. And we put up the assembly line. We built the assembly line for Chrysler at 8 Mile and Outer Drive in a warehouse. Then we reassembled it in Tennessee, and it built 2,500,000 cars, Dodge Shadows. I wrote a song called Here Inside the Shadows. Donald Trump appointed Bob Bolton. I and Bob Bolton built the Dodge Shadow assembly line. And we built airplanes together, but I'm never mentioned. All right. I bought a house for Miller. Miller wrote a book, said he He murdered Hoffa, a complete bullshit story, because I bought his daughter a house. Okay, that's why he did that.
You even grew up with John DeLorean, and then when DeLorean gets arrested, they put on Time magazine,
Yeah, well,
bottom
those were the
line
drugs I
busted.
stopped. They tried to frame me. They put me in jail for a year. They put DeLorean in jail and tried to say my friend DeLorean was delivering drugs, and he was completely cleared of that. He
Right.
wasn't. That
But
was
the
that was our
Time
own.
magazine article
That was
was
our
amazing.
CIA bringing drugs onto my farm and selling illegal guns to Mexico with the
Right.
senators, and then to hide me, they arrested John DeLorean, who drove past me every day. He lived in my subdivision. He would drive past me every day as I walked to my school bus. It's unbelievable how this government and media have lied to everybody about everything that matters. They lied to you about Kennedy, and that's CBS and Barbara Walters and Garrett and Walter Cronkite. They lied to you.
Did you ever see the Time magazine article on John DeLorean when he was arrested?
My
And it said
family
the
owned
bottom
Time
line.
magazine.
Yeah, yeah. Well, whoever they sold it to at the time, they
I'm the
hid you
Harris
pretty
family.
good there.
We own Harris Publications. We owned 165 worldwide magazines: Business Week, Life, Look, People. Our competition was Patty Hearst, the Hearst Communications Group. They owned the other magazines. Forbes magazine was owned by Harris. You have Obama's friends there. Oprah, she owns Squier.
Yeah,
I'm
Hugh
Squier.
Squier.
I'm Squier. Why would she own Squier? My family owned all the world's magazines. When we gave you the computer, we got out of magazines because you can't sell an ad in a magazine anymore. The ads are being sold on TV and the internet. And my grandfather knew
that you're not to explain to the people listening that don't know. When you say that your family gave people computers, well, your father-in-law was Joe Jacobs from IBM.
Correct.
And you'd have, I guess he would be something like
And
a
the Fuller
great
family
uncle.
gave you Hal, the first talking computer.
Well, yeah, but
Fuller.
hold on, I'm not done yet. Bill Gates' dad married Mimi Gardner, and there you had your Aunt Gardner. So that would even make him an uncle by marriage, like a great uncle or whatever.
And I grew up with the Gates family.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right, Greg.
Right. Yeah.
And everybody thinks I'm lying, and I'm not. They think I'm inserting myself into these things, and I'm not.
And he was at your wedding, for heaven's sake.
My family built this country. We authored your declaration. We're on your money. And the Queen attacks every generation. And then Canadians tell you that one of the best families in your country who employed more than half of you, Bill Gates, he owns coronavirus patents. These are blatant lies coming from the throne of England through people like Alex Jones and Jesse Ventura and Julian Assange, a pedophile.
What is that patent that everybody says Gates owns? Coronavirus patents.
I read one. He owns 60,000 coronavirus patents. This is just bullshit, Greg.
Right.
You know, and it's all coming out of the London media. It comes out of Canada, Greg.
Yeah. I know it's a distortion when they say there's some patent that is owned by Gates, but it has nothing to do with making the coronavirus. I'm trying to figure out how people are connecting this.
Don't even give it any credence by mentioning it anymore. This is just complete BS, hiding my truth of the Oakland County child killers, the Americans and the London people who killed the Kennedys, 9/11. Oklahoma bombing. They're hiding me and everything, Greg. And all of these events surrounded my life after they stole my name and my entertainment license from a federal court. They even beheaded Mr. Foley in a studio. And my entertainment publishing license comes from Foley Court. They dismembered Mr. Foley, if you remember.
Yeah, and you've got the photos. They're showing, it's obvious
Greg.
somebody leaked the photos.
It's all fake stories coming right out of the Queen's media. and the senators selling drugs and guns to Mexicans. They're selling guns to Mexicans and getting money and drugs in return, and they're still doing it. They pretend like they're not, but they're still doing it.
Now, it's hard to put all these stories in a sequential way that makes sense to everybody. We kind of
because they
shotgun
changed the
them out
dates on
there.
the news stories. Number one, they changed states, they changed names. Baker
Say Hemingway died in Idaho when
Baker becomes 2 Ks instead of 1.
You knew the guy leading.
1971 becomes 1991.
Well, here's the evidence.
Idaho. I don't think it, Greg. I watch them do it on a daily basis. Anything I talk about, they change the names and the dates.
Well, here's two evidences of that. You knew the guy that led the tours of the Hemingway mansion, and he would lecture you about history and all. Yeah,
he was my friend.
Right, and he says Hemingway died right there in Florida, and the FBI or CIA or whatever makes these news stories saying he died in Idaho, which is where they say that Ruby Ridge happened. It didn't even happen out there. They changed the date and the time of that. And then now
I don't
another
even care
story
about what they report in the news anymore, Greg. I don't care.
Yeah,
I really knew all these people.
Another story, we caught him red-handed, Hugh. You were telling me, okay, Baker was always spelled, Jimmy and Tammy Faye Baker was spelled with 1 K, and we caught him on the internet spelling it with 2 Ks. So I said, all right, well, I'm going to go look for a book where it's spelled with 1 K, and I found one, and I bought the book.
Well, I know. His name was always 1 K, and they gave you Tammy Baker, and I owned Baker College when they did this, as my daughter Tammy was born.
Right.
You got Tammy Baker, and I'm the Baker family. And Tammy Baker isn't my daughter. That's how they marked her on the 700 Club. And I owned a ministry with one of Willie Nelson's guitar players. Go figure, Greg.
Yeah.
Just go figure. And then, Anderson, who kidnapped me, he ran Marquette State Prison. And another Anderson ran your college, didn't he?
Mm-hmm.
This is just a big con, Greg. Coming out.
Well, you knew a lot of famous musicians too. You knew the people from Styx, from
Greg,
Boston.
I played with Styx. I worked with all of Bob Seger's musicians.
Ted Nugent.
I worked
played
with
at his
John,
bar.
in high school. I played with John Kane of Steppenwolf.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know a lot of people, Greg, but none of them will admit I exist. Because there are people like Ted Nugent who, when I stopped drugs, all of a sudden he showed up as a DEA agent. Gee, Ted, I must have stopped your drugs. And I stopped the drugs, Ted, because they were killing little kids on my farm with drugs off of Good Humor trucks. And the CIA was delivering them, Ted.
You suppose Glenn Beck will get that message and maybe quit hanging out with him so much?
I doubt it. Oh, you mean Alex Jones?
No, Glenn Beck.
Oh, he hangs out with them too, huh?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I'm tired of all of them. Alice Cooper. Cooper raped my daughter. Gee. When they raped my daughter, I was with Twisted Sister in New York and the Bourne Publishing Company in Stanley Mills.
Just to explain that.
I asked Dee Snider.
Hugh, you need to correct that.
No, Greg, you need to listen to this. I asked Dee Snider. Dee Snider is my friend on Facebook right now. And I asked him, I said, why don't you tell my truth? We met in New York 10 years before 9/11. I'm Bottom Line Publishing. You weren't Twisted Sister yet. You and I had dinner together. And you know what he told me, Greg? He says, well, I can, if you need to hire me, just make me an offer.
Yeah.
That's what he said. Instead of telling the truth of 9/11, he wants me to pay him.
Right.
Right. And that's who these people like Ted Nugent, this is who they
really you said Alice Cooper raped your daughter when you meant the name
it's
Cooper.
The same family.
Right, same family.
It's
but
I don't
want somebody getting confused thinking it was Alice Cooper.
It's the same family. Alice Cooper marked me in so many of his bullshit movies.
Mm-hmm.
I'm tired of they put this little thing on the end. Any likeness to anybody in real life is just coincidental bullshit.
Yeah.
I'm Bottom Line Publishing. I created the trademark. Oh, Steve Austin. It's just a coincidence, Steve. Bullshit, Greg. I'm tired of the bullshit in this country. They hide behind these little things at the end of the movies. Any likeness is just a coincidence. Yeah, sure. I'm Hugh Squier. Hey, Huey Lewis. It's just a coincidence that I delivered the Detroit News and they put my trademark bottom line on their front page for 2 years. As you stole my name. It's just coincidence, Huey. And your name isn't even Huey. It's Billy. You know, start telling the truth, you sons of bitches.
Well, Kennedy's press secretary writes a book and calls it Bottom
and Billy
Line.
Squier was who? Billy Squier was the Queen, Freddie Mercury's guitar player. Oh, he steals my last name, Squier, and his name isn't Squier, it's Craig. You know, come on, Greg. But any likeness is just coincidence.
And they call it Queen, and nobody can put it together that it's from London and from the Queen, even though they call it Queen.
Yeah. And a Queen kidnapped me and tortured me and murdered kids in his basement. And L. Brooks Patterson covered it up. And everybody I'm talking about is a Detroit musician, Ted.
Through her peerage, Osborne. Yeah, it goes together so well.
You know, I grew up in Detroit. I was born on 8 Mile and Outer Drive. I was married to Mary Miller. Oh, Eminem. You know, come on. It's just a coincidence, Greg.
Yeah.
And I can go on all day like that, and you know I can.
Yeah. Well, we've probably gone on long enough because we've probably drowned enough people and enough information to
there's too much
last
in my
a lifetime.
Yeah, anything I talk about can be a book in itself, and you know it can be, Greg.
Now, at the beginning, before we started, you said that you wanted to talk about Hoffa, and I want to make sure you got whatever else you wanted to say about Hoffa.
I wanted it made perfectly clear that my mother-in-law was with Jimmy Hoffa, and I was detained for Jimmy Hoffa's disappearance and murder 6 hours after he disappeared in my Troy, Michigan driveway in front of my kids by the FBI before they detained Chucky O'Brien.
Right.
Okay, my mother-in-law got the drugs that put Jimmy Hoffa to sleep from a nurse I knew. She worked with the nurse. At Michigan Bell. And that's all I'm going to say.
Yeah.
And why doesn't the FBI look into that truth? Why doesn't the Oakland County Police look into that truth? If they really want the truth of Jimmy Hoffa's disappearance, and I know right where he's buried, why don't they look into that?
Yeah, right there on your father-in-law's property.
Oh, yeah. He dug the hole day before. Yeah. And the nurse gave the prescription to Louise, and Louise was with Jimmy Hoffa, put it in his drink, and then they buried him in the hole and covered the hole up, and then they tried to shoot me standing on top of the hole. Correct, Greg.
All the pieces go together really well.
Yeah, I mean, I have nightmares about it, you know. And the guy that did this was an ex-state policeman and a Navy woman. Yeah. And who was in the Navy, Greg? Oh, the Kennedys. And what was this? Jimmy Hoffa and Kennedy were enemies. And that's a bullshit story. And this is how they hide me and my real truth with the bullshit stories. I'm the real thing, Greg. And I'll say it till I die, and you know I will.
Mm-hmm.
And the people that wrote the books, Miller, he killed Hoffa bullshit. Miller worked for me and Tony Tocco. And Tony Tocco was my friend. I put the furnace in Tony Tocco's house after Hoffa's death. And Tony Tocco wasn't around. Okay, my secretary, Janet Bauman, her brother was my attorney. When
this was 7 years after Hoffa.
Yeah,
and this guy's still trying to go around.
Yeah, 7 years
later. He killed Hoffa, and it wasn't even connected.
Well, I knew Tony Tocco about 3 years after Hoffa disappeared. But that doesn't matter. Tony Tocco wasn't there. He didn't kill Hoffa, okay?
Right, right.
Janet Bauman, my secretary, who would talk to me and Tony Tocco and Miller at college and at my business, Shelby Service Center, which was rented from Jack Ruby's Carousel. Okay. Her brother was my attorney in Tennessee, where Terry Heath was murdered, where Victoria was murdered and dismembered. And he was murdered on the day they cut off Victoria's ears and slit her throat, on his way to file murder charges with the district attorney in my wife's murders. They murdered my attorney. You know who did that, Greg? Obama's White House with Garrett from CBS.
Yeah.
But I don't exist, and I'm lying. I'm a liar, Greg. And I was running a ministry with Willie Nelson's guitar player called Smoky Mountain Ministries, located, its headquarters was in Bulls Gap, Tennessee. And Dolly Parton and her father were on the other side of me in Gatlinburg, but I'm a liar. You understand this? And then they covered up Victoria's murder with Cook and Perry. And Cook and Perry are Louise's family members. Louise, the girl that had the nurses' drugs that were illegal to put in Jimmy Hoffa's food.
Yeah.
Oh, well, Cook and Perry are her relatives, Greg. All right, you understand this? And they hid me with the Perrys. And when they murdered my wife, they didn't even give my wife or Terry an obituary in the Greenville Sun, owned by Alex Jones. I mean, put it together, Greg.
Right, but they let the band Perry play with government protection.
It's just coincidence.
Yeah.
Also, Janet Bauman, my secretary, with Tony Tocco and Del Carpus, we rented from the Carousel, which is Jack Ruby's trademark. Her brother is murdered on his way to file murder charges in Johnson City with the district attorney. And they write natural causes on my wife's death certificate, and she's missing her ears. Go figure, Greg. And these events are 20 years apart. Same people, 20 years apart, from Detroit to Tennessee. And then on the day they murdered my wife, they murdered Moore's girlfriend. He found his girlfriend in a trash bin at Graceland. And I'd just been to Graceland. And my high school friend, Oscar Tyler Moore, found his girlfriend murdered 700 miles away from my wife, where my wife was murdered. She was murdered in Graceland. My wife was murdered in Johnson City, two opposite ends of Tennessee, on the very same day. Oh, and then who shot at my uncle, President Ford?
I did not get the names.
From, and then 17 days later, Moore shot at him twice.
Moore, yeah, no, I did remember now. That's right.
Well, yeah. Oscar Tyler Moore was shooting at my family, and his wife was found in a dumpster, and my wife's ears were missing.
Yeah, Mary Tyler Moore's family.
40 years later, Greg. 40 years later.
That's why Mary Tyler Moore was never given an Oscar.
It's just coincidence. It's just coincidence, Greg. Yeah.
This will correct every book in the country written in the last 50 years.
I own Bottom Line, which is used all over the globe by every news station on earth. I'm Huey Squier. Huey and Billy Squier, they played all over the world using my name, and the Pope took my middle name. And you
can't listen to a Fox News broadcast without them using Bottom Line.
Yeah,
it's real conspicuous when they do it.
It's just coincidence. It's just coincidence. It's just coincidence, Greg.
Right.
And Rupert Murdoch, he owned Fox News, and I owned all the Fox Entertainment contracts before cable television or Fox News existed. Remember, Greg?
Oh, with Harry Fox. Yeah.
Yeah, Harry Fox and Tommy Valendo. I really know those people, Greg. Mm-hmm. They gave my church partner, he gave you the Monkees, and he owns HBO.
Right.
And he owned the Gummy Bear patents. And my friend in Whitmore Lake, where they gave you White Boy Rick, he owned a $1 billion patent on triangles that level machinery, and sold all over the world. He owns a patent. Pete Medaychek. He's dead now, but I lived with these people. I lived with Mr. Frisbee, as everybody got a Frisbee.
You knew publishers Stanley Mills and B.B. Bourne, who was...
the Mills family is my uncle, Greg.
B.B. Bourne, who was Elvis's publisher.
Yeah. Frank Sinatra, Bill Gates, these are my family. Mm-hmm. And everybody tells me I interject. I don't interject myself into nothing. I own Bottom Line, New York. It was a worldwide publishing company, and Americans murdered my wives and stole it from me, along with England, France, and Germany. And then they told you Saddam Hussein did it.
Someday maybe you should play the home video of your Aunt Gardner as a kid and how much she looks like the Queen. That's amazing.
Yeah, why bother? Why bother? Nobody believes a word I say, Greg, and you know it's all true.
She looks like Ava Gardner. She looks like the Queen.
Yeah,
pretty
you've
amazing.
Researched it all. My own mother looks like the Queen. My mother had dinner with the Queen just before she died. I was with Margaret Thatcher just before they murdered her. I and my wife, Victoria Mellon, had a military 10-course white glove dinner with Margaret Thatcher just before they murdered her, and you got Bob Ford. And who was the president in my family? President Ford. His real name is President King.
Right.
He's the Gardner and the King family.
And his mother's Gardner.
I'm the King and the Gardner family.
Right.
You know.
You had Motley Fools run by the Gardner family.
Yeah, we run the Motley Fool, and I went to Warren High, and Mott is who our football team played against. And my family owns Mott.
And your Aunt Gardner gave the pictures to the Smithsonian of Amelia Earhart. And now they say that her plane crashed on Gardner Island.
On Gardner Island. That's correct, Greg. Yeah.
Right. It's amazing what they
and on that kind of history. And then you got this little girl pretending to be a black girl from the Queen's possession, using my family's name to be your vice president. And they're going to kill Joe Biden, and she'll be your president, and she's not even an American, using an American's name. This is what's going on. And they're entertainment attorneys who studied out of my stolen trademark in California, bottom line. And you know you did, Kamala, and so did your husband, Mr. Emhoff. That's my stolen trademark. Stanley Sandowski and Alan Pepper stole it with Weiner and Associates. And all you Democrats know this, and you're using my family's names and my name and my stolen trademark to pass the bar exam and then to get into the White House using my stolen name. You people ought to be ashamed of yourselves. You know, too bad Manson is in prison. I'm sure he'd have a shot at all of you. I don't kill people. I'm telling truth, and everybody's too stupid to listen to me, Greg. You know, show me this video go viral, and then I'll think there's some hope for America. But I don't think there's any hope for any of you.
They bought every single lie out there, every false article, every baloney story. They've bought it all.
I know.
Because they don't understand.
And when I tell them the truth, I don't exist. And you know why, Greg? Because they've all stolen money from me. All of them.
Yeah.
Every entertainer in the country, every lawyer, every judge has stolen my life as they murdered kids. And this is truth, Greg.
Yeah. And every so-called truther on both sides of the aisle, everybody that's supposed to be telling you any kind of news.
They don't want to admit they stole a raped 4-year-old's life, name, business, and murdered his twin. They don't want to admit it, Greg.
Yeah. And that was the Queen still in your story on 9/11. That was the whole thing, Hugh. I mean, we've already talked in the past about how they already planned to steal your life on 9/11 because your baby pictures were taken by Dell Towers.
Yeah,
Towers on 9/11.
By Eastman Kodak, George Towers, and then my music teacher in school was Dell Towers, and I played in school with the music professor from Michigan State, Gary Shunk, and before Gary Shunk, John Kane of Steppenwolf. That was our band in high school, Greg.
And you had George Bush on 9/11. That's unreal.
Yeah.
Taking down the Twin Towers. It's unreal.
Yeah, it's on my baby pictures, Greg, and you know it is. I've showed it, and it says 2-4, and I was kidding.
And then the WWF that stole your trademark and says now, and that's the bottom line because Stone Cold said so.
Yeah, and then
they broadcast that 9/11 was going to happen in 1989 when Hulk Hogan and Savage were saying,
and then you got
the
Michael
Twin Towers
J.
will
Fox,
come crumbling down.
And you got Michael J. Fox. His father was on the Enterprise with my family in Vietnam. And they give you the clock tower, and I'm playing at the clock tower in Utica, Michigan, as they give you the clock tower that says 9/11, and they go into the future, and they play Huey Lewis saying, "Got to get back in time." I don't got to get anywhere.
Yeah,
I
another
don't,
movie.
I don't
That's why
have to
another
get
movie in
anywhere,
London with a
Billy.
clock tower had
His
9/11
name
on it.
isn't
It's
even
unreal.
Lewis. His name is not Huey Lewis. It's Billy. All right. It's a complete con coming right out of the White House and the London throne room and the Senate. Every senator in the country knew me until 9/11. Then nobody knew me. I'm going to land this here, Greg.
All right.
Bye. Thank you for joining me.
My pleasure as always.
Bye-bye.